I was serving a customer, a petite brunette woman glued to the latest iPhone, when my colleague threw open the doors dramatically, almost giving our only customer a heart attack. The ice-cold blast from outside blew my ponytail back. Guess who's fucked? I didn't look up from perfecting a foam heart on our festive flat white, ignoring the woman's tut. Soren pulled off his apron and slumped into an empty chair. It was 3 p.m. on a weekend, and we were a ghost town. Ghost shop, whatever. I guess Deja Bru, I said, sliding over the coffee and flashing the customer a grin. She made a point of gesturing around, like she was saying, "Where is everyone?" And I could only give her a tight smile. When the woman was gone, I nodded at Soren's baseball cap. I did tell him to wear a thick jacket and hood to cover his face, but he was apparently the master of camouflage. Nice disguise. I turned to grab the guy a frosty Pepsi. Did they recognize you? I didn't get much of a response, just a grunt. Soren downed the soda I put in front of him. "They have all of our customers, Pepper," he said in a hiss. He was shivering in the short-sleeved tee that was mandatory in the dead of winter. The guy's dark hair was glued to his forehead in thick clumps, his apron sprinkled with melting snowflakes. Maybe I should have made him hot cocoa. My colleague dropped his head into his arms with a groan. They're even doing Phoebe's Choco Mint Boba with the festive snowmen. This is fucked. Slumping in the chair opposite him, I took a sip from the soda, reveling in the ice-cold flush down my throat. "But that's her secret recipe," I said, my own tone surprising me. "How do they know it?" "Witchcraft." He muffled into his arms. I couldn't resist a smile, though he wasn't wrong. I wouldn't go that far. "They're evil," Soren whispered into wooden grains. "They even managed to get Kyra to go to the dark side." He lifted his head, lips curving into a scowl. "Apparently, they offered her higher pay and more holiday hours." I didn't realize I was squeezing the soda until my fingers were pulverizing aluminium between my fists. "Tyra said she was sick," I said through my teeth. Tyra was supposed to be working on Christmas Eve. If she had joined the opposition, that meant my holiday plans were ruined. Milo was going skiing, Wylan was seeing a play with family, and Yuri had her toddler's school play. My blood was boiling. She said she was coming back next week. "I thought that too," Soren groaned, leaning his fist on his chin. "See for yourself." I jumped up, grabbing and ripping him from his seat. Ignoring Soren's complaints and my jacket, I bound into a flurry of snowflakes dancing in front of us. It was freezing cold, the temperature already seeping through my thin apron and bleeding into my bones. I could barely feel it. Fueled with anger, being a college student meant I had next to no rights. Yuri and I were the same age. She had been using the "but I have a daughter" excuse for 3 years. My rage dragged me to the town square, shoving my way through patrons. Soren was barely clinging on. There it was, Coffee Delight. Coming to an abrupt stop, I didn't even have to step over the threshold. I could already see her messy blonde bob through the window strung with Christmas lights. Tyra's smile was wide as she hopped around, a spring in her step serving a long, winding line of customers. Fuck. The cold slammed into me like a wave of water, and suddenly I was shivering. I craved warmth, and that was inside their store. I hate that I was entranced by their pretty lights illuminating the late evening snow, the warm glow emanating through the door. At that moment, part of me wanted to give in. I don't know what possessed me when I twisted to Soren, my heart in my throat. "She's under a spell," I managed to choke out, ignoring my colleague's raised brow. "Tyra's part of our weird work family. She wouldn't abandon us." "Exactly." Soren was jumping up and down on his heels to keep warm. "So, how do we get her back?" He shot me a panicked look. "We are getting her back, right?" Eyeing the doorway, I narrowed my eyes. "We could drag her out of there," Soren snorted, leaning into me for warmth. "Wouldn't that technically be kidnapping?" Watching my ex-colleague dancing to the radio through the window made my blood boil. The bitch had deserted us, her work family. I thought she was my friend. What did that stupid poster say in the break room? "We're all in this together." Yeah, fuck that. She just wanted out of the Christmas Eve shift. I folded my arms, pressing warmth into my chest. Not if she doesn't scream and we do it subtly. We're just talking to her. I had a plan, a stupid plan, but it was still a plan. Twisting to Soren, I was grinning, mostly because I was freezing to death. Do you still have that moldy garlic? Soren's lip twitched. I could count every individual freckle on his cheek, an uneven mismatch bleeding into the snowstorm. With Wylan and Phoebe, the two of us were classified as the younger ones, so situations like this were left to us to handle. Wait, are you serious? I had to resist a smile, biting into my lower lip. Deadly, Soren laughed, but I knew he had that garlic. The weirdo had been eyeing up that little stinker way too much to just throw it in the trash. Soren was the neighbor's kid grown up, a 24-year-old man who spent his time ripping insects apart and preserving strange smells in bell jars. His apartment was exactly what you would imagine it to look like. It's a good thing he was cute. His smile was a little too big, eyes wide with intrigue. It had taken us half a day to air the stink out last time. You want to smoke out the enemy. I kept my gaze on Kyra. You sneak inside and drop the garlic. When they freak out, I'll grab and drag her out. Soren scoffed. Why am I the one who has to plant the garlic? He pointed to his baseball cap sitting lopsided on charcoal curls, catching the setting sun. They already recognize me. I'm considered enemy number one. Tyra was still laughing, preparing some fancy coffee that was our recipe. How did you even get enemy number one? Soren followed my gaze, his narrowed eyes tracking our ex-colleague. They saw my apron under my coat. I frowned. But you're not wearing a coat. Well, yeah, he huffed, clearly embarrassed. They stripped it off of me. That's borderline assault. I muttered, right. If someone happened to look out the window, whether employee or patron, we probably looked insane. Or if they had an imagination, like spies undercover. If spies wore ratty aprons covered in sugar, that was. I told you to wear a better coat. I shoved him. Yeah, I know. Rookie mistake. You've been here 3 years, so have you. I opened my mouth to answer when the door opened, a familiar face bleeding into the snowstorm. Lev Beaumont, oldest son out of 3 siblings, and the most insufferable guy I had ever met. Annoyingly talented at his job, and the eye candy behind stealing our customers. You would be surprised how many suburban soccer moms and low-level Karens went for college kids in their mid-20s. Lev's smile was friendly, but I could see the smugness from a mile away, the triumph prickling in his eyes. Everything about him, about them was better, even his uniform. A plain white apron over a light blue tee was leagues better than our short-sleeved shirt and jeans. Lev already knew they had won, settling us with a grin with too many teeth. The smug bastard could afford veneers. Soren, however, was convinced this guy was a vampire. Deja Bru, Lev said our name like a tongue twister, folding his arms across his chest. I noticed his gaze straight on Soren. What can I do for you? His lips quirked into a smug smirk. You've brought a friend. That's kinda cute. Soren made a sputtering noise. His face was already tomato red. Yeah. Well, so are you. He was speaking on the defense, but his words were tangling into an incomprehensible mess as usual. Soren didn't take confrontation well. Last month, he accidentally said yes to a date with the manager of a rival coffee store who came to intimidate us. I think he was expecting to be insulted, already primed to spit out a comeback. Ignoring my flustered colleague, I focused on the enemy. Tyra, I said coolly, Soren nodding along, maintaining that intimidating glare. He just looked like a kicked puppy. I had met Lev maybe 3 times, and he was already pretending I didn't exist, offering me a flashy grin. Can we talk to our colleague? Lev's lip curled. She's working. Clearly, I kept my professional smile. It will take 2 minutes. She doesn't have 2 minutes. Lev's words were cold. Final. He made a shooing motion like we were stray fucking cats. I didn't move and he took a step toward me. I could smell his breath. Mint. Now that was closer to him, this guy's expression was eerily frozen in that insufferable smile. Lev's eyes had no color. He was perfect. Perfect smile, perfect figure and hairstyle. Too perfect. He smelled like disinfectant, a pungent odor creeping into my nose and throat. I didn't realize I had stumbled back, and he took that as a surrender, straightening up. His eyes were latched to Soren, eyes raking up and down my colleague. If you don't want me to call the police and complain of pests, I suggest you go back to work. Pests, Soren shot back. Listen, man, I cut him off. Do you smell that? Soren leaned closer. Smell what? Wait, is it over? Did he back off? Not even close. Lev turned away before I could come up with a comeback. It wasn't his attitude that was bothering me, though. Something was off about him. That smell, strong enough to incite a memory tugging in the back of my skull. It was visceral, almost painful. Why did I feel like I had smelled it before? When Lev was disappearing behind the door, I was still trying to figure out how he could have zero color in his iris. My thoughts foggy and disjointed. I could taste it in the back of my throat, creeping into my mouth, something slimy and putrid, like sticking my head directly into a bucket of bleach. I shook my head, gulping in air. Maybe he was a vampire. Did he just call us rats? Soren grabbed my arm gently when I didn't respond, pulling me back down the road. I barely noticed the snow getting heavier, flakes stuck to my cheeks. That guy wasn't blinking. I heard myself hiss out, "You mean Mr. Vampire?" My colleague pulled me into a stumbling run, the two of us pushing through the crowd. The snowstorm was getting worse. It was the usual for our town, but it was still a nuisance. Soren clung to my side for warmth, his teeth chattering. "See, I told you he was a bloodsucker. I bet he's hypnotizing our customers, luring them into their trap." I still wasn't sure what I had seen when we made it back to the shop, only to be reprimanded by Phoebe for leaving the counter. Soren disappeared to clean the bathrooms as punishment for leaving his post, and I kept serving customers, making coffee and hot cocoa, occasionally jumping over the counter to talk to the others. I told them about our standoff. Halfway through closing, our boss, Iris, came bustling through the door, scowling as usual. She was always busy doing something, muttering on her phone or doing private paperwork in her office. That night, she was talking on her phone, something about vermin. I caught Phoebe's eyes almost popping out of her head. My colleague was terrified of them. Iris offered a strained smile and told us all to head home, phone still pressed to her ear. Yes, I remember her saying, "Yes, we need to take care of the rats now, before it gets out of hand." Rats. Soren poked his head through the bathroom door, a plastic blue apron over his uniform. I noticed his grip around the mop was a little tight. I don't think he was a fan of the cleaning products. His nose wrinkled. "Shit, do we have an infestation?" Iris shook her head. "It's nothing for you to worry about," she said. "Feel free to head home now. You're all tired." "But I have an hour left," I told her, only to be met with a glare. Iris pocketed her phone, striding over to Wylan, who was refilling the milk. She grabbed his face, tracing her fingers down his cheeks. "You stink of them." She prodded at his apron, and I caught Soren's panicked look. Both of us had doused ourselves in cologne to mask the scent, but our boss's sense of smell was brutal. "Take this off." Iris prodded the boy again. "Get a new one from the storeroom. If I smell it again, you're fired." Wylan was our newest hire. A year older than me, he was surprisingly timid. An engineering student in his final year and a video game fiend when we all hung out. We had already designated Wylan our adopted son in our dysfunctional work family. Iris was yet to get over him accidentally dating the enemy. "Yes, ma'am." His eyes were wide, trembling hands already untangling his apron. Iris turned to the rest of us, and I stumbled behind Phoebe, who smelled of wildflowers. "I said you are all tired," she said, and her tone was enough to send us into a frenzy. I pulled off my apron. Soren dumped his cleaning supplies. Wylan was still leaning against a refrigerator, a carton of whole milk in his hand. He sniffed himself 3 times. When Iris was gone, Soren clapped him on the back. "Ignore her, man. You're cool." He gently extracted the milk carton from Wylan's hand. I left the room when my colleague resorted to showing a shell-shocked Wylan TikToks to make him feel better. I took advantage of getting off early and got out of there quickly before I could get sucked into their drinking plans, because it was never just one drink. Following that day, I couldn't stop thinking about Lev Beaumont. I didn't understand him. Expressionless eyes with zero color and a constant smell of disinfect, like he'd been swimming in it. What I did understand was that we were going under. Deja Bru was dying. Everyone knew it. We were just in denial. I had been working at Deja Bru since I was 18. If we really were going down, it was the end of an era for me. Until early last year, we were the go-to coffee shop in my small college town. Before they arrived, Coffee Delight was a family-run business. Dad, mom, 2 sons, and a daughter. They seemed nice at first, paying regular visits to get to know the community. That was until they started stealing our customers, and then our recipes. They sent in spies to note down everything we did to copy it. They went into freakish detail profiling us. Tyra was our best barista but lacked social skills. Soren, the most confident, yet couldn't take criticism, his tongue a mile ahead of his brain. Wylan and Phoebe were so-called eye candy, but suffered from anxiety disorders and problems with self-image. I was the one that told them to fuck off and threw old garlic at them when they tried the friendly approach. I didn't buy it. Phoebe wanted to trust them, and admittedly I did too. We were two independent businesses in a constant fight against the likes of the big guys. I understood the want to be better, but these guys didn't just want to be like us. They saw our status as the top coffee shop for college kids and immediately wanted to destroy us. In the summer, we started doing boba tea, so they did too. Our exact recipes. We had no idea how they were copying us and doing better. It had taken us a week to realize our new guy Wylan had been fraternizing with the enemy, one of their daughters. And bam, they magically had Phoebe's Choco Mint boba served with lemon cake. The bitch used and then dumped Wylan by text once they had bled us dry. Wylan was their way in. Even after he stopped seeing the daughter, somehow they always knew. We introduced a new recipe, they magically had the exact same one. I was convinced he was bugged. And I don't mean his clothes. So this was war. Our customers were dwindling, and they were thriving. So, excuse me for not being in the Christmas spirit, I grumbled, downing another glass of wine. I wasn't one for pouring my heart out, but it just kinda happened. Drunk Wylan was a good listener. The texture of my drink was different and a little tangy. Maybe Iris had opened up the real good stuff. Don't be such a Scrooge. Wylan laughed, his lips latched to the rim of maybe his third drink. He was unusually chirpy for a man who had become obsessed with his smell since Iris chewed him out. The guy smelled like an athletic store, overly paranoid of being called out again. I was happy he was letting loose, but maybe this was a little too loose. Wylan was leaning his weight on the refreshments table, only to leap back with a laugh. I told you, for like the zillionth time, I'm not bugged. He gulped down more of his glass, spilling half of it down his shirt. Dude, I think I'd know if I was bugged. I studied his glass, keeping a tight grip on my own. How much have you had to drink? My colleague shrugged. This is my first one. I found myself laughing. Sure, our Christmas party was in full swing, and of course we had our first casualty. Iris had definitely blown next month's budget on decorations, but I couldn't ignore how pretty they were. The tree towered over me, golden lights and tinsel monetarily taking me off guard. Do you think we're going to be SH Jagged Head Jeg? What? I yelled over the music. Maybe I was a little drunk, but Wylan suited the Santa hat sitting on top of his curls. He raised his glass mockingly, fired. Wylan's yell pierced through the music. I caught a tipsy-looking Soren shooting me a grin. He was dancing last time I happened to catch his eye, and now he was leaning against the wall, flickering eyes captured by the Christmas lights. His crown of fairy lights shouldn't have looked that cool, especially when it was definitely a fire hazard. But, fuck. He looked kinda good. Woo, Soren mouthed, tipping his head back. Yeah, I thought dizzily. I found myself grinning, mimicking him. Woo, well, here's to a better 2024. Wylan whooped over the obnoxious Christmas song blasting from the Alexa. In the pretty reflection of holiday lights strung around the room, he looked almost ethereal, a mismatch of color in his eyes. Not just Wylan, Phoebe, sleek dark hair whipping around her as she danced. Her tinsel crown was glittering, dancing in my eyes. I blinked and I was in front of her, my fingers entangled in hers. Phoebe had been sending me mixed signals for a while now, ever since crashing at her place for the night. I had a twisty gut for her, but this was more concrete. Definitely drank too much. I drained my glass anyway, and the world kind of jerked to the left, then the right, leaving me in the middle, my thoughts dancing. You guys can relax. Anyway, the boss has a plan. I could hear Wylan's voice, but I couldn't see him. I couldn't see anything, my vision blurring into a slowly collapsing pinprick. The music was still playing, and I was well aware of my body still moving, my voice, my laughter, warm lips pressed against mine, arms wrapping around my waist. The sensation of tinsel tickling my head, a warmth spreading in my chest. Before the music stopped, eerie silence except my own labored breathing. Disinfectant. The reek was so strong, my body physically keeled over. Pepper, the voice was familiar, a low hum in my ear. I lifted my aching head. My first thought was that my feet were bare. Second thought, I was sitting down, my wrists tied down to metal armrests. Third, I was still wearing my apron. It was damp, glued to my flesh, and stunk of BO. But I took off my uniform. I wore a dress for the party. Lights. There were lights in my eyes, so bright. No longer Christmas lights, they loomed over me, two glaring spots dancing in the backs of my eyes. When I opened my mouth to speak, my mouth felt raw, my lips blistered and boiling hot. Can we go through this again, Pepper? My boss's voice bled into fruition, and I noticed streaks of dark red dripping down my bare legs. I was wearing thin shorts over my apron, shorts I didn't remember putting on. I said. Iris's voice was loud, clanging against the walls. Walls of metal. Can we continue? Already, my body was responding for me in a vicious nod that hurt my neck. I was aware of my bruises, the claw marks in my flesh, bandages covering most of my face, but I couldn't feel the pain that came with it. I couldn't feel the blisters from screaming until my brain was melting. I couldn't feel the lumps in my throat or the marks in my palms, my bloody knees from trying to run. I was just numb. Yes, my mouth was moving before I could stop it. Something illuminated my face, and I leaned back, blinking away the stark glare dancing in my eyes. The whole wall in front of me was light. Iris knelt in front of me. She smelled like disinfectant. I hope you cooperate this time, she sighed, placing two singular strips of tape over my eyelids to hold them in place. All I could do was watch her, gulping in the stink of bleach. It was all over the floor. The thought hit me, slamming into my skull. I rubbed my own filthy feet together, stark red stains entering my mind. She used disinfectant to clean blood from the floor. Pepper. My head snapped up, and I nodded, my gaze flicking to the white light. Yes, Iris stood in front of the light. Her shadow swam in and out of view. Can you do a big favor and concentrate real hard on the smiley face? Her voice bounced around the room, now behind me. Can you do that for me, Pepper? A wail built in my throat. Why am I here? The smiley face, Pepper, that's it. The light morphed into a series of confusing images. They started off black and white. I could see families of 4, white picket fences, and 50s-style diners. I sensed my face contorting into a smile. I liked these images. They made me feel relaxed. Cocking my head, I searched for the smiley face. But where's the smiley? I mumbled, my eyes flicking left and right, up and then down. It's there. Just keep looking. I did, my eyes straining against the sticky feeling of the tape. When the images changed, black and white pictures of smiling children and puppy dogs morphing into blood-red splatters, brutal gore, and executions flashing in time with a light at the corner of my eye, I started to strain against the chair. Turn it off. The stink of bleach in my nose and throat was agony, burning me from the inside out. I screamed, and I could see my own small feet on a long hallway. My shoes were bright pink, the soles stained red. I was making a mess, dragging my pink shoes down a long corridor. That smelled like, can you see it, Pepper? My boss's voice murmured. The smiley face, can you see it? No. Something sharp pricked my spine, and my body fell forwards, a raw screech escaping my lips. I could smell my own filthy hair, my apron, my skin, smelled like bleach. When the cruel prick became a sharp plunge, a knife's edge grazing over the bone of my spine, I whipped my head up, scanning the screen. My shoes were bigger this time, and I was making bloody footprints. Hop. I jumped over tiles. Hop, skip, jump. I can do this all day, Pepper. Iris hissed. Another sharp plunge. My shoes were adult-sized, and I was dragging a body-sized lump. Can you see the smiley face? Yes. The tape was loose over one eye, but I could see it. Amongst the shades of dark red, a smiley face was blinking at me. Okay, good. Iris's voice swam in and out, hot warmth running down my neck and chin. Then I'll ask you again. My boss's smooth, sultry voice bled into my ears. What is coffee delight to you? She knelt in front of me again, her warm hands cradling my cheeks. Speak nice and clearly, Pepper. I don't want to hear mumbling. I couldn't register my response at first, my mouth parting, my voice a zombie-like groan. Tell me, Pepper, what are coffee delight? She jumped up and the light flashed. This time I could see a grainy photo of the store itself. The fairy light strung in the windows. Blinking against the tape, I glimpsed movement across my foot, tiny claws digging into my feet. Bulging lumps of fur scuttled across my feet, razor-sharp teeth ravaging into my flesh. I screamed, flailing back. The chair didn't move. My arms didn't move. Rats. My voice came out in a sharp whisper. There was one clawing up my bare leg, whiskers twitching. Get them off. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. What was that? The smiley face grew bigger, shrinking and flying across the screen, my gaze following it feverishly. Get them off of me. That wasn't my question. Staring down at the flesh of my arms, my skin was splintering open, maggots squirming from razor-sharp fissons. This time my mouth worked, but it was full, bugs squirming in the back of my throat. What is coffee delight to you, Pepper? Spitting a mouthful of crawlies, I writhed. Rats, I clawed out. Rats, they're rats. Her eyebrows furrowed, lips curling. I don't believe you. Iris jumped up. When the others were offered that question, they gave me a different response. I'm sorry, I have no choice. I was barely aware of her moving from spots. Look at the light, Pepper. One final time. She moved my chair around, but I don't remember moving. Keep looking at the smiley face for me. I did, my body instantly obeying. Another sharp prick in my neck. Then another and another. Time short-circuited. I measured it in my breaths, and then the lack of. The last prick was powerful enough to twist me inside out, my thoughts burning me inside out, a vicious tendril of venom bleeding inside my brain, contorting and twisting my body until I was laughing. The bugs dissipated, and the rats at my feet were suddenly tiny, so tiny I could kick them, stomp on their disgusting faces. I was bent over in my chair, howling, red splattering the ground. Christmas music started up once again, louder, deafening in my ears, a blend of fairy tale and Last Christmas. I was spinning around and around on the dance floor, my chest aching. I was wearing the same dress, but it was tighter on me and my hair was longer. I was laughing, giggling, sputtering into my drink that tasted like bleach mixed with blood. The others were around me, Phoebe still attached to my hip. She had a scar on her lip. Her smile was thin, her dancing robotic. Soren leaning against a wall. His hair was shorter, arms by his sides. This time his crown of fairy lights were dimmer. His lips were a straight line, eyes piercing right through me. The boss has a plan. Wylan was directly in front of me. His voice was no longer slurred, eyes hardened. That I do. Iris stepped onto the dance floor. Applause followed, my own hands coming together in a frenzied clap. How many times have we had this party? September, October, November. Thank you. Our boss's smile was bright. She held up her glass in a toast. I want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and a different 2024. The clapping grew louder. Happy holidays. Soren was whooping, waving his glass, but in the confusing flashes in my eyes, he wasn't smiling. So loud. Tell me again, Pepper. Iris's sultry voice seeped into my skull. I was still laughing, straining in my chair when Iris asked me the same question. What are coffee delight to you? My mouth split into a bloodthirsty grin, wrists flexing around rough rope. The tape was hanging off of my left eyelid. Rats. And what do we do with rats, Pepper? We exterminate them. I spoke through saliva filling my mouth, dripping down my chin. The very thought of killing the rats made me happy enough to cry, go scream, trying to bound from my restraints. I remember laughing, fighting against the ropes that held me. From this moment on, this is a memory. I was not self-aware during any of this. My boss's words were still clanging in my skull when, during closing time, I strode inside Coffee Delight and shot Lev in the back of his skull. Missed. I was reloading before my conscious mind had caught up. Rats. The familiar voice was behind me, spitting venom. Soren shot one of them, taking off its head. The others around him scurried back, whiskers twitching, and to my surprise, grabbing weapons of their own, their squirming rat bodies scrambling for cover. I aimed and shot again. My hand jerked, my fingers perfectly melded around the butt of the gun. This time I did hit him, but he didn't even move. I started toward him, and he still didn't move. Lev was still making coffee, his blood-stained hands calmly wrapped around a towel. Rats. The order was still in my head. It wouldn't stop or falter, a command twisting my skull. Rats. Exterminate the rats. I could see their tiny little claws, long tendril-like tails. Fucking rats. I leapt over the counter before a figure followed me. I didn't properly feel us collide, only the sharp bang of his gun slamming into the back of my head. I hit the ground, blood pouring from my nose, my vision blurring in and out of view. I was inside Coffee Delight. 3 dead baristas and left Beaumont unmoving, his back to me. The guy continued making coffee, unfazed by the explosion of brains streaked across the wall. I got out of there fast, a thudding pain in the back of my skull. Fuck. Nose is still bleeding, and I can't go home. They know where I live. I think my boss just tried to turn me into a weapon. I don't understand the passage of time. I've been to multiple Christmas parties. Which was the real one that led to all of this? Why can't I feel my mental and physical trauma? December 19th, 2023. Why am I just numb and cold? And that smell, I can still smell it, even in this library. Everything smells of disinfectant. The keyboard, the woman sitting next to me, even the books, the air stinks of it. I can't escape this stink. It won't leave me alone. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.